Hey everybody, welcome to the third episode of Zvezdan Zdravic podcast. Today I'm joined by David Grinberg, an venture capitalist, angel investor, CFO of several small businesses, and very knowledgeable guy about many different topics like business, markets, cycles, funds, and so on. Welcome, bro.
Hey man, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So what brings you to Dubai? Like, you're from the US, right?
Yeah, it's such a funny story. I ended up going to London because I had a business event that I was going to see.
Yep.
And on the last day there, I'm spending like 5 days in London. And on the last day there, my friend Josh is like to me, "Hey, I'm going to Dubai. Do you want to come?"
Yeah.
And I already had my return flight booked back to Miami and everything. And I'm just sitting there in my room and I'm thinking like, why not?
Yeah.
Like literally, why not?
Yeah. I mean, Dubai is a great place to visit, but now currently it's kind of hot. It's a bit humid. So, I mean, you're probably used to it because you're spending a lot of time in Miami, right? So it's kind of similar climate. Right?
I love the sun. I was born in New York and I've survived enough New York winters to appreciate the dry heat now.
Yeah.
So I spend as much time as possible avoiding winter and trying to stay in the more summery areas. I found that it's helped a lot with like my general mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Because when it's sunny, I know my mindset changes. Like I'm motivated to work, I'm motivated to go out. Whereas when it's winter, like you're kind of want to get stuck in the house and don't go out.
Yeah, dude, my lifestyle in New York was literally work all the time. You have 2 to 3 hours to go train jiu-jitsu and then get back, work, maybe have some meetings, and you're done for the whole day. Like that is just the day to day.
Yeah.
Now I'm living in Miami and it's like wake up early, work out, go do some work, have some calls. 11:30 comes around or sometime midday, go play golf. Literally, I'm playing golf now.
You play golf? Yeah, that's so amazing. I've never played golf, but I know it's very popular. I mean, in Miami and in Dubai as well.
Yeah, I used to think that jiu-jitsu was like the hardest sport possible, but now I also appreciate golf as well because it's almost on the same level, but you can't like take your business clients to go train jiu-jitsu. Like most of them aren't going to be doing that, right?
That's right.
But for golf, it's like, I started in January and to actually start getting into it, paying for lessons and all that, you kind of just have a new appreciation for things. It's a great excuse to, first of all, go outside and you're schmoozing with people. You're just talking all day, hanging out, coming up with new ideas. I found a lot of my work from when I started out, I was an options market maker.
Okay.
But when I started out, I found that a lot of my work as I've transitioned to the more executive role has been just having conversations with people that are also in executive positions. And it's because those people are the ones who are responsible for their teams.
Exactly.
So people may think, oh, you're going out just for lunch or you're going out just for dinner or whatever, but it's really not that. My whole lifestyle revolves around having conversations almost daily. And, you have to be disciplined throughout all of it because there's, restaurants that are always trying to sell you booze.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other distractions that come with it.
Definitely.
And you have to stay super focused and disciplined on, no, I'm here for my purpose. I'm here for my vision. And I'm not here to, be stupid, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's very true. Going on golfing or going to different kinds of events to speak with business people is very useful because it's not just about fun. It's also about you can make business with these people. You can learn something from them. You can teach them, and you can make friends who are on high levels, which is very important, I believe. And that's one of the reasons I moved to Dubai, for example, is to network with a lot of young, successful guys because Dubai is a hub for successful people. So how's that in Miami? Are there a lot of successful guys in Miami that you can network with and play golf?
Yeah, I found that the successful people in Miami generally you look at it like, how much money do you have, right? But to me, I don't really measure success just from that.
Okay.
There's actually a joke where it's like, if you're from New York, people ask you how much money you have. If you're from Miami, people care about how you look and also how much money you have in a sense. And then if you're from LA, people care about who you know.
Who you know, yeah.
And you can't escape that in the big cities. So to me, those are all just kind of markers of someone who's competent.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you just have these things, right? If you have a nice car, but you don't know how to drive it, like James Bond kind of drive a car.
Yeah.
If you're loaded with, you know, the coolest, let's say golf clubs or any other type of cool thing, like a toy, like a gun or something like that. A gun's not a toy, but anything like that, but you can't actually use it properly, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing for you is basically like you can have all the nice stuff you want, but if you cannot utilize it, if you're not adept at it, if you're not good at it, it's kind of useless. It's just like a showing off, basically.
Yeah, like I speak 4 languages.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But
which 4 languages are those, by the way?
it's Spanish, English, Hebrew, and Russian.
That's great.
And my logic has always been you need to just build competencies and things. And if you don't have the competency, then you need to find someone older than you who's a mentor and is willing to mentor you to do that. So, you know, I'm not the typical 23-year-old, but a lot of what I've done has been around just shutting up and listening to people smarter and better than me, which has allowed me to kind of separate myself from the crowd and become, you know, the person that I am today.
Yeah, that is very wise. How did you learn that you need to do that? Have you read any books? Have you learned it from somebody else, from a friend, from a mentor that you saw?
Yeah, a lot of it came down to when I was in high school. I was pretty sick, and I was actually bedridden for a pretty good period of time. But I was just like, man, if I can get out of this, because we were still kind of trying to figure out what it was, and it was just some very long-lasting cold. It was like a 3-month cold, which I couldn't get over.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I was like, if I can kind of change the trajectory that I'm on, all I want to do is go surfing in South America or something like that. That's what I thought at the time. And then one day my uncle came in from DC, and I saw that he was selling options against his stock portfolio. And I was like, okay, that's sky money. Let's see what we can do there. Yeah. And I just started ordering books and reading a bunch of books.
Okay, so that was at 16, you said, or?
Yeah, like 16, 17 years old. I was already just reading it.
Cause that's pretty young, because I'm currently 29, and I didn't really love reading books at my age, because we were forced to read books that we were learning in school, but I never knew that you can read a book about something that you want to improve, something that could be useful. We were just reading novels in high school. But I never knew you could read a business book about creating a business, or a book about changing your mindset, or something that's going to be useful in your life. So you had and you and the guys today, your age and younger at 15, have an incredible advantage, because there's a lot of material online, not just in forms of books, but in forms of courses, forms of YouTube channels, podcasts. So today's young people can really, really make it if they start taking seriously self-development.
Yeah,
like you did.
Well, I owe a lot of this to my dad, because my dad's a doctor, and he's a first-generation American. He came from the Soviet Union, and a lot of his philosophy is just education. He's the biggest learner I know. And that kind of constant subconscious action that he would take. He's always reading a new medical journal, and always curious about the world. Just a very science-minded person. Yeah. And this is someone who came to the U.S. with nothing. I mean, I'm talking about his father was a shoemaker in Russia, and his mom was a house cleaner. to just make ends meet. They came to the country with like 200 USD at the time.
Yeah.
So it's like nothing still.
Yeah.
It's not really anything that you can do. But yeah, my grandfather tried to work for someone else, and he said, screw this. I'm not going to work here. I'm going to open up my own shop. And he became a shoemaker in the U.S. as well.
And that's a big step, not choosing to work a 9-to-5 job and being safe and venturing out there and creating your own business, whatever it is.
The whole discussion about 9 to 5, I think it's kind of misguided because I don't really think there's anything wrong with 9 to 5. I feel as though I work way more than 9 to 5, just trying to do my own thing, right?
Yep.
And I think it depends on your personality type, really. Are you, and this is based on the E-Myth, so are you a technician, are you a manager, or are you an entrepreneur?
I read that book and it's very useful. Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about, right?
No, of course.
So if you're a technician, you need a 9 to 5. That's for you. That's meant for you. In fact, this is going a little bit more into the psychology, but I employ people. I'm the manager type. I'm actually not the entrepreneur type. And it took me a while to learn that because the lines kind of
blurred.
They kind of blur. Yeah, exactly. But when I hire people now, I'm quickly thinking, what type are you? What do I need for my role right now in the business?
Yeah.
And then I also ask them to take like a Myers-Briggs test, because the more I can understand, who they are in terms of personality, the better I can place them in the position that they want to be in, the one that where they're waking up every day and saying, I actually enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's very good that you're doing all of these types of tests, and then you have all of this knowledge, so you can basically find the right people for the roles you need for your business.
Yeah, everyone's different. And I think that the biggest job that I have, besides talking to other business owners every day, is really just thinking about, especially when I meet new people, like, where is this person coming from? Like, what is his perspective? I don't have to agree with his perspective, but I just need to really understand, like, where are you coming from? What is causing you to have this opinion, right?
Yeah.
A lot of issues get solved right from there when you just start having, that's called empathy. When you have empathy for people, you don't have to feel for them, but you can have empathy.
You want to understand where they're coming from. Why do they have opinions like they do?
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's very useful. Like, putting yourself in other people's shoes can show you their perspective, and maybe even you'll change your mind because you haven't considered the thing that they have considered. So it's very useful talking to people, and that's what I love about masterminding and networking with people, because that's where you get a chance to speak with people like you. For example, like you're an expert in different fields than I am, but it's so interesting hearing your perspective and your experience in some of these areas, and I can learn from that.
Yeah.
So, and maybe you can learn something from me.
I hope so.
But yeah, that's what I love about these types of conversations. So tell me more about your business and what you currently do, and
Yeah, absolutely. So I right now run an alternative investment group. We're basically focused right now on more venture capital style deals, but there's plenty of other things that we operate under. We don't have a mandate. We don't have a predefined set of things that we look for. We just look for the right opportunities, the right situations, where there's value that we can either add or we can extract from some type of inefficiency in the market. Market inefficiencies exist. They exist more in markets that are less liquid. So the less people are betting in a market, the more there is opportunity for exploitation to see a mispricing in something, right? And that's fundamentally what you do when you buy a business. Either it's a public stock or it's a private company. What you're saying is you're basically betting on the idea that this business is priced not in according to the future cash flow of the company.
Yeah.
And that's investing in a nutshell, right? You're just buying something for its future cash flow.
Yeah.
And what it can be worth based on that future cash flow in the future. So that's a lot of my focus comes into finding margins of safety around those acquisitions. So if you think a company's worth $100, right?
Yeah.
And it's, let's say, people are selling it for 110.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to look at it until it's like worth on the market $75 or even $50.
Yeah, obviously, because you want to make profit.
Yeah.
So you're basically buying companies or stocks or whatever, the assets, when they're undervalued, when you think they're undervalued, and because you think the value is going to go up in the future, and then that's where you want to sell or make profits. Or what do you usually do? Like, what's the the end goal? Like, is it just getting the profits and then reinvesting into something else, or what's the goal there?
It's always kind of this tug of war that I have internally about that, because the minute you buy something, right, it's because you've done research on it. Like, you spent a lot of time researching that thing because you need to be sure. And I can talk about why that's the case. And it's mainly because I don't make that many bets in general.
Okay.
I'm only making 6 or 8 bets every 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm very limited with what I focus on, and I concentrate my investments there. And that's mainly because I'm a small guy. I'm not one of these bigger institutions that, just have so much cash that they have to deploy that. And certain investments are just too small for them, so they have to do a bunch of them just to make some type of return happen for their larger fund. I'm a smaller guy. So I have to be more careful. It's kind of like, I have a friend, I'm not going to say his name, but he kind of describes it. He's in a similar space as me. He kind of describes it as, you're a speedboat and you're going around the water, and these larger firms are these giant tankers. And if a wave comes in, the tanker's going to be fine, but you're going to get washed over. So you need to know how to navigate around that.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what I do, is just waiting for the right plays, kind of just sitting back like a sniper and waiting for that right move to go into.
Okay, very good. So what kind of returns can you expect and can others expect if they follow a similar strategy like yours, in terms of percentages on investing money?
So I think that it's not really about the percentages. It's more about the risk that you have to take to get those percentages, right? So if someone comes to you and says, I made 15%, but they risked 40% to make it, and then someone comes to you and says, I made 10% and they risked 5% to make it, who's better? Right?
Yeah.
It's the guy that risked less. And in the game of finance, it's all about survival. It's really not about trying to make the craziest return. And the reason why that's the case is, if you're investing in private businesses or private ventures, right, unless it's some fixed type of security, and even then you don't know, because you had situations like Silicon Valley Bank where they had a bunch of bonds default and things like that. When recently,
I've heard about
when it
that.
blew up. It's really about controlling your downside from the businesses that you own. So when you're in business, I really think about it as, how many things have to go wrong for me to lose versus how many things have to go right for me to win. Right? I don't want to force things to go right. I'd rather force the things to not go wrong in the areas that I can control. So for example, what's the marketing like? Right? What does revenues look like? Is there seasonality in the revenues and all of that? And what you find in investing is that you can't really predict demand. But you can definitely predict the supply of something. And that's why you have almost monopoly-like brands like Rolex, where they control the supply. And plenty of other car makers and other brands as well that do the same thing.
Got it. So why did you choose to get involved in the traditional investing compared to crypto, for example, which is, very volatile? I mean, obviously higher risk, higher returns, but why did you choose to go to the more traditional and safe route compared to, the riskier and faster route?
So a lot of it was, well, first of all, you have to consider if traditional is safe.
I mean, nothing is safe nowadays, but I mean, more, let's say, safer than crypto. Maybe.
Yeah, so for starters, I wasn't educated on crypto. I started in 2017. I was an options market maker, and I did that with a mentor of mine for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
And then I went off and launched my own alternative group. And also now I do CFO work for companies in special situations. I create financial teams for these guys. We do a lot of magic.
Yeah.
And I applied a lot of those concepts from risk to what I do now. So I found that I learned, in general, it's a universal principles that you learn in any field, really. If you're in construction, you're going to learn things about risk that you're going to learn if you're in aviation or if you're in the military or anything like that.
Yeah.
A lot of fundamental truths about the universe I've found apply to other fields, and that's why you see people doing career switches and still excelling at them. I was in Tampa recently, I think like 2 months ago.
Yep.
A private equity firm was opening up their office space for the first time. Do you know how many Navy SEALs I met that day?
Really?
Out of an office of like 30 people, I think there were 6 or 8 former Navy SEALs.
Wow.
And now they're doing private equity.
The complete opposite of what they did.
But what they learned in the Navy SEALs can transfer over to something like that. And it's because in business in general, it's really just a game of people and processes, right?
Yeah.
And those people and processes are based on some type of competitive advantage that you have that you think you can bring to the market.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in terms of competitive advantages, there aren't actually that many, but if you have one, you can make a lot of money.
So what kind of competitive advantage can someone have over someone?
Yeah. Well, the first one is the most obvious one, which is scaling potential. Right? So the bigger you can scale, the bigger market and audience you can reach with your solution to whatever commercially viable problem they have, the more money you'll make right away.
Definitely.
But then you also need to have a form of customer captivity.
What's that? Customer captivity?
Yeah. So customer captivity is what keeps them coming back, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at Coca-Cola, they have an insane customer captivity. It's actually a cultural statement.
Yeah.
If you look at orange juice, right, or cereal, people have been so ingrained with the culture of, okay, I need to have cereal with my breakfast. That's kind of what keeps you captive to the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, just making a culture out of a product and then ingraining it in people's heads, and then that's how you're gonna have generations and generations of new customers. Because, for example, if somebody in family drinks Coca-Cola, then they're gonna serve it to their kids, and their kids are gonna buy it, and then their kids are gonna also get addicted to it.
Yeah.
So that's very smart.
You have tobacco as well.
Tobacco, yeah.
You have cars, Porsches, Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean everything that you can buy nowadays is obviously all of these companies have capitalized on people's desires, like Apple. Like in the US, I think 90% of people own an iPhone.
Yep.
I currently use a Samsung. I have an iPhone just for videos, like recording videos, but I don't know, in Europe a lot, and in Asia a lot of people use Samsungs. People use Samsungs more in Asia than Apple iPhones, whereas in the US, it's more prevalent. Like when somebody sees you with an Android phone on a Samsung, like they say, "What's that?"
Yeah, and those cultural differences, I guarantee you, these companies are spending billions of dollars a day even to try and figure out how they can penetrate into that market and switch the culture. So if you look at Starbucks, for example, Starbucks was a brand that was geared mainly towards the higher net worth crowd of businessmen who are looking for a place where they can lounge and have a cup of coffee and do work, right?
That's interesting.
So people think Starbucks is like, oh, Starbucks, McDonald's drive-through, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, and I would suspect that if you consider Starbucks drive-throughs as a business concept, it probably didn't do that well. But when you look at Starbucks, the store, where people can come in and sit and have meetings, and it's generally more of a corporate setting, right? That's not by accident. Starbucks tried to do the same thing in India, and they failed. And that's mainly because they had a large problem revolving around tea.
Tea is very popular in India.
Very popular. And, as a business owner, you have to make agreements with distributors for tea. You can't have a day where your store doesn't have tea because that ruins your whole brand, right? Yeah. You can't have shortages. And McDonald's story as well about their chicken nuggets is quite fascinating with how they did it. It's more up my alley. Yeah. But in terms of tea itself, they couldn't secure the right contracts and convince the public enough to apply to the business model or the business concept as a whole in India. There were other predecessors that still had an advantage there.
Of course. Like you like you said, there are certain advantages that these companies have. So some of them can have an advantage of being there for a long time. So if another company tries to go into that market, they're gonna be met with high resistance.
Yeah, and that's called a barrier to entry.
Barrier to entry. Okay.
So anyone who's entrepreneurial in spirit has definitely tried to start a company, and then they realized, there are people that are doing that already, and they're doing it way better, and it's gonna just put me into bankruptcy if I try to compete.
Of course. So that's why it's important for, normal people who want to become businessmen and want to have their own business, to find a business that, obviously there are advantages and disadvantages to getting into markets with low barrier to entry, but then it's way easier. Like, for example, in Serbia, an average salary is around $500 per month. Imagine if these people try to enter some markets where the investments needed are, let's say, $10,000 for just starting up the company and doing something.
I'll say that for most private deals with private accredited investors, the minimum entry for those guys is like 50 or 100 grand.
So that's, you're talking about your space, but I'm talking about there are different types of markets that you can enter, and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to enter into a certain market. For example, the market I'm in, it's the music industry. YouTube channels, YouTube automation, music channels on YouTube, basically. So to start a YouTube channels, you don't need a lot. So I started with zero money, basically. It was like maybe 13 years ago. I started in my bedroom, created a channel, costs nothing. You have an internet connection. You create a thumbnail, artwork, everything yourself. And you basically license music from somebody, and you don't pay them anything. You just split the revenue, and you just sign a contract. So you don't need any money basically to get into the music industry. And it's similar today. Like if somebody wants to start a YouTube channel, which I'm going to be teaching in my course and coaching program, you can start with zero money, but you can, if you want to start wild, you just need $1,000. So you just need $1,000 and a certain type of knowledge to get started, and then you're going to be able to create channels that are going to be generating you passive income. It's almost like having like an apartment, that you're renting, and basically just building out apartments, So that's pretty fun. So what I'm trying to say is basically you don't have to invest $100,000 to get into this market. You can invest only $1,000,
and you're actually benefiting from other competitive advantages. So you're actually benefiting from economies of scale immediately because it costs nothing to share your content, right?
Yeah.
All you need is, I guess you can do the paid ads route and whatever.
You can, but that beats the point. Like if you wanna start with the least investment to get the most results.
Right.
So obviously, like I've never invested a penny into ads, and I've built my channel organically to 23 million subscribers. So I think it's, for YouTube at least, it's all about the SEO strategies, following trends, like hopping on trends, giving the audience what they want. Obviously, in the beginning, I was trying to share my music favorites, and those were small genres, small markets that nobody heard about. Like it was glitch hop music. I don't know if you ever heard about it. Obviously dubstep was bigger, but there were electro swing. So these markets don't have enough listeners to be able to go worldwide. But if you go into pop music, rap music, rock music, country, like these markets are much wider,
Right.
and that's where you can basically invest very little, but then get a lot of traffic from these markets because they're popular. A lot of people listen to these types of music.
Yeah, and the reality is, if you're just starting out and you want to go your own way and you have to work around all of these larger players, the riches are in the niches.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can keep digging down and down and down and become as kind of niched and rare as possible, that's your product line. And the only way that, and I think people go about this the wrong way because they think they can do all the research on the internet. But even if you start, let's say, a 9-to-5, and you see problems in that 9-to-5, and then you start interviewing other business owners, and you ask them, hey, is this a real problem? And you start digging and digging and digging, and you realize, okay, this is how I would operate this type of segment of that business. Here's how I would make it better. Well, you've already created a business model that can print you cash.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I think it was Naval Ravikant, he said this. He said that anything you do in Excel can be a software.
For sure.
And I primarily do invest in software, but I use it so that we can eventually become a solutions provider for other companies that I'm involved in.
So software as a service.
Yes, yes. And one of the things about software that people mess up on from day one is they think the software is just meant to solve a problem. And it's really not that. The software is actually just meant to replace a job that you're doing.
That's funny you say that, because we have, I mean, obviously with the rise of AI, people have started using AI to replace job positions.
Commercially viable jobs too.
Yeah.
They have to be commercially viable.
Commercial, yeah, of course. But there's a lot of repetition and my business and creating videos. So people who work for me, they create videos manually. But recently, I got into an idea because a friend suggested that we could create an AI program that basically creates videos on its own. So basically, we are working on that, and it's incredible how much time saved you can get by including an AI program into your business. Like we can probably cut the time in 3 or 4 by just introducing a program to our business.
Yeah, a lot of business in general is broken down into people and processes. And AI solves the processes issue, but it doesn't really solve the people issue. And I think that's a good thing because you need people in business.
Of course, you're never gonna replace thinkers, the entrepreneurial minds, like people who manage. I mean, I think you can replace the worker bees, the people on the lower level, and people say, like, when AI becomes more widespread, people are going to lose their jobs. Of course, yeah, people on the lower end who are worker bees are going to lose their jobs. But then I think AI is going to create more job positions, and these people are probably going to requalify, or they're going to re-educate and then start working at those new positions that pop up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a biological thing at its most philosophical level, which is how adaptable are you? Right.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You need to be adaptable. I mean, that's one thing, as I mentioned earlier. It's important for my business at least, to adapt to the music trends, music markets. Like, give the audience what they want, not just what you like. You can like push what you like as well, but then you have to give the customer what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah, so that's also the other thing. It's what is the AI actually replacing in the processes, right? Like, if you have low-level jobs, let's say it's being a cashier or whatever, right? Maybe that's actually part of the customer experience. It's funny. I actually went with my friends to Dubai Mall, and when I was there visiting, first of all, it's It's wild. I've never
Yeah.
seen them all like this before. But when we were there, we sat down in this, kind of Chinese soup restaurant or whatever, and we realized that the reason why it was so packed with families, kids, was because the staff there were part of the experience. It's like going to Disney or something, right? And we saw one woman there eating alone, and I thought it was I thought it was crazy at first, but then genius later.
Yeah.
The woman is eating alone in the shop, and across from her is this life-size plush doll cartoon figure sitting right opposite to her,
Yeah.
giving her company.
Wow.
And I think that subconscious kind of human experience or feeling of community is what people really want.
Of course,
so
yeah.
Can you really replace the human experience in capitalism? That's kind of what I've been thinking about recently.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the technology at some point is going to be so advanced that you'll be able to fool somebody that you're talking to a human. And have you seen that robot Sophia?
No, I haven't.
I think it's been around for at least like 7-8 years, but
Okay.
it's a humanoid robot that you can basically talk to, and obviously it's not perfect.
Oh yeah.
But
I think I know.
I mean, at some point, I believe you're going to be able to talk to a robot that looks exactly like human, that speaks exactly like human, and instead of putting a plushie just to sit still, you're going to probably have a companion that can talk to you, in person.
Yeah, and it's the weirdest shift to me is, are people, like human beings, going to be the only spenders in the economy, or are robots going to be spending on their own, right?
Wow, that's a question I've never thought about. Actually, it's a
That's the freaky part that I've been talking about with my friends who run funds and are also business people and whatever. That's the question. Like, will a robot ever say like, "Oh, I need this, so let me just auto buy it for myself and then auto repair it for myself"?
Wow, that's I don't know what I think about that. Do you think like if robots become as close to humans, like in terms of emulating the human experience, if they are able to think on their own, do you think we should give them rights as some kind of let's say equal to humans or lesser than humans? Should we? You've probably seen a lot of movies,
those
sci-fi movies. Yeah, I love those. But it's a dilemma that I'm not sure I can answer.
I don't know, honestly. I think that and this is a common problem with profitable companies too, but when you start thinking a lot about like the internal culture in terms of like who has what people do, and it's less based on trust and it's a lot more bureaucratic, let's just say, the company's not really growing as much. And I really hope that, and this is a question that does need to be answered, but I hope that we, as a human race, we start doing more things and we're pushing the boundaries, like what Elon Musk is doing with space exploration or something like that. I think there always has to be a vision, both in companies and people, and as a society as a whole. There needs to be like this, okay, now what are we doing? Now how are we going to grow? How are we going to do the next thing? How are we going to make things better for people? If you just solve, let's say, like everyone's immortal, right? On the planet.
Yeah.
How are you gonna, keep everyone occupied? And I think the way to do that is to discover more about the universe. I think if you're a creator, an entrepreneur, fundamentally, what you're trying to do is be creative, and just solve. Either you're solving a problem, or you're just trying to just do something cool. There are people out there like that.
Yeah.
I don't see them a lot because I'm in a profession that's based on how can we get a return on our dollars.
Yeah.
But they exist, and they're important in society as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people like that can shift society's trajectory. Like, for example, Nikola Tesla with electricity and many advances that he made, which even nowadays, some of them cannot be interpreted by today's scientists. So imagine, I mean, I've seen some videos, for example, people were using cars that ran on water 100 years ago. They were using cars that can easily park by, changing the way wheel works when you're parking. So you can park diagonally and sideways. And fridges that look like incredible, have 1,000 compartments and very useful. And now some of these companies, and even electric cars, like people have driven electric cars, I think 100 or 200 years ago. And I've seen the prototypes, the videos, people driving those like it's nothing. And nowadays, like Elon Musk is coming up with an electric car that's obviously, like, all of these people, I think they're using something that's already been discovered, but maybe forgotten, have been forgotten. For example, the car that runs on water, it exists, but it doesn't really benefit. Like the markets wouldn't really benefit from having a car that runs on gas. Like the oil market would disappear, and that's what the governments don't want.
Yeah.
So
I heard some rumors about that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those things. So I think, I mean, obviously governments. What do you think, for example, about governments? Do governments have good intentions when it comes to their citizens, or do you think they might want to control them and use them in a certain way?
Yeah, I think it's just one large bureaucracy. Whether it's necessary or not is always up to debate. But what I like about the U.S. government is there's plenty of other governments that have this type of idea. The idea originated in France, but you just have this idea of a natural law, common law, natural laws of man.
Yep.
The idea that, we have property rights, we have protections that are solely for us, that the government can't infringe on. Because, before America and the French Revolution, everything was almost feudalistic, or there was a monarchy, and, there wasn't a lot of social mobility. And a lot of what we have today is special because it hasn't really been done. I mean, you can argue that it was done in Athens, but, look what they did with Socrates, right? He just started saying a lot of stuff to people that, didn't like what he was saying.
And then
he had to kill himself instead of being exiled, right? So the question really is a government tyrannical? At what point does the government become almost like a psychopath that is just killing people left and right? And you can look at Roman history for that, with Emperor Nero, Caligula. When you have absolute power to a point where no one can say anything to you, and you can do whatever you want because you're at the highest point of wealth, that type of power needs to be checked. You obviously have great leaders as well. You have people like Marcus Aurelius who, had to deal with the crisis of the 3rd century and all of that. But the real issue is this a tyrannical government? And if it is, then it's up to the individuals of that nation to make a choice on whether they want to accept that tyranny or if they're going to, unfortunately, have to fight it. And that's why America was founded.
Right? Yeah, fight it or even just move to a different country now, because maybe
that's the more popular route nowadays.
Because, for example, speaking of taxes, in Serbia, the taxes are pretty high. I know in Europe, some countries like Germany have taxes up to like 60%. Whereas Dubai, I mean, used to have 0, now it's 9% corporate tax and every other tax is 0. So I mean, if you don't like one country and the rules they're upholding, you can just move to another country, I mean, obviously, US has some rules, certain types of taxes that you need to follow, certain types of social behavior that's accepted. Whereas, for example, Dubai, UAE has totally, different rules, and people can choose where they want to live, which is amazing, I think, right?
Yeah, that's recently, I think, a result of the lasting peace the U.S. created after World War II, where the U.S. came out and just became this global dominant force that kind of pushed these values on, for good or for bad, but I think it was for good, on everyone else. And I think that you fundamentally can't do that in some countries, for example.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the U.S. I mean, you guys, you need to pay taxes in every country.
But even, even
to your
leaving
country,
a country.
no, if no matter if you lived in Dubai and the taxes were zero here, you would still have to pay taxes to your country because that's the way the tax system works in the U.S., right?
Yeah, yeah. And then if you want to give up your passport, you have to pay like a 50% exit tax or something crazy like that too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've heard of some wild stuff. I have no plans to do that, but
Yeah.
I will say that there are countries in the world right now today where you can't really just move out of there.
Yeah.
They won't let you.
I mean, yes, I've heard some of them, like
North Korea, for example. You can't leave
North Korea is a different story,
right?
But
there's people there. They can't leave. They just can't.
They cannot leave, and they cannot probably do. I don't even know what's happening there, but I know it's probably not ideal.
Yeah, yeah. So what we have is special. But can a government get too big? Yeah, a government can get too big. Can it get too small? It can also get too small.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always this kind of balancing act where I think that it depends on, you know, the cycle we're at in that like very famous philosophy, like, you know, good times create weak men, and then weak men create hard times, and hard times create good men, who then create good times, and the cycle just continues.
Yeah.
A lot of actually my investing decisions are based on that kind of logic as well, like just cycles and stuff like that. It's really just where are we?
Yeah, where are we currently, and what can we do? Like, how can we adapt to the market? What are the best moves to take according to the current situations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people they try to guess the future, right? And what I really try to do, and this is based on an investor named Howard Marks, I really just try to think about the present. I try to think about where we were and where we are today. And that's when you start thinking about where we are today, that's pretty hard already, right? So to try and guess the future is kind of not optimal. But what I like to do when it comes to making an investment decision is I like to look at things where it's like, okay, could this be better? Could this quality of service be better? Could this operation be done better, right?
Yeah.
And if it isn't done better, right, or if it can't be done better, then there's going to be eventually a period of time where the prices are going to be overpriced because the business isn't built to handle a certain type of demand.
Yeah.
So they have to raise the price.
Yeah, in order to stay profitable and keep running the business, right?
Yeah, but also because it could be an advantage. Like if the entire industry is slow and the entire industry is having problems, if you're the best one in the industry, but you know that, you know, still it's not really a sustainable industry, there's breaks in the system, there's miscommunications and whatever, prices naturally go up on your side, but that also lets you raise the prices on the customer side as well. And I actually wrote a paper on this on shipping. The shipping industry is almost archaic. Like it's not built to handle the shocks in the system like we had with COVID, and we had all those supply shortages, we had those chip shortages. The shipyards are just old. Some countries are just scrapping the current shipyards that they have. But I think it's like 70% of global trade depends on shipping, right? So there is a demand. And if there's ever a period where there's a shock to the system, these types of industries are more likely to benefit from those shocks because they're inefficient and because there's not enough people willing to, you know, come in and say, I can do it better. And that kind of goes back to our original discussion on barriers to entry. Yeah. Because it costs a couple $1 billion to get a boat of that size and then to run that operation. And that creates opportunity for guys like me, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing, David. You seem like a very knowledgeable guy, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And I definitely like to catch up again, maybe in a future episode. And do you want to tell the audience like where can I follow you if you want to share some of your info or any of your companies that you want to promote, maybe?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Mr. Grinny, mr.grinny. You can find me on LinkedIn. David Grinberg is my full name. And you can also shoot me an email, david@greenmountainconsulting.org.
Amazing. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for coming, brother.
Thanks, bro.
and hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me.